Okay, this video is on order of operations and evaluating expressions. Um, so let's first talk about order of operations. Now, a lot of us are familiar with order of operations being, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Okay. I'm not a really big fan of that one because it's kind of linear. So I like to think of it as like a top-down process. So we're going to look at this process right here. You always start at the top and work your way down. And the question is over here, what do we do first? What do we do next? And so forth. And the other thing to remember is whenever you get to the same level as you're going down, if you're at the same level, um, you're going from left to right. Okay, so let's figure out the correct way to do this. So whenever time you have an expression is a set of numbers or variables, no equal signs, but this, a bunch of terms put together. How do we simplify it? So if you always see a parentheses, you want to work with that first. After you've done all parentheses, then you move down and look for exponents. After exponents, then we do multiplication and division. Now here's an example where we go from left to right. So depending on the problem, so this is almost kind of like a mom and dad. Who do you listen to? Well, they're both your parents, so if dad asks you to do something first, you do that first. If the next day mom asks you to do something first, then you do mom's request first. So they're both at the same level. So you do whatever one comes first, left to right, when you're at this level. We'll see examples of that. Likewise, with addition and subtraction, these are like your siblings, your brother Adam and your sister Sue. And they're both siblings, so they're both the same level. So, if you're going to play with one of them first, and then the next day you're going to play with Susan the next day first, okay? So you want to look at those at the same level. So let's go ahead and take a look at some examples here. Okay, so evaluating this expression. So I got my little notes over here to the right. So the first thing I'm going to do is, okay, do I have any sort of parentheses? I do not. Okay, so these are two problems. Let's split those up. Do I have any exponents? I do, right over here. So I'm going to literally rewrite the whole problem as is, and then I'm going to do just this portion first. So I'll do it a different color. 4 squared, which is 16. Okay, so I want to do that part first. Okay. I'm done with exponents. Down to go multiplication division. So where do I see those at? Well, I see those right here and here. So in this case, notice division comes first. Okay. So what I'm going to do is 6 plus, and then what's 12 divided by 3? That's 4. So when I'm looking at that, I'm really looking at what comes first here. Okay. And then we're going to say, okay, times 16. All right, so then we're still at the same level, multiplication and division. So what we're going to do is 6 plus, what's 4 times 16? Well, that's 64, okay? And then the last thing is addition, so now we're at the bottom level. 6 plus 64 is 70. So this whole expression, no, it's an expression because there's no equal signs, simplifies down to 70. And if you want to, you can kind of tag each level. So this level over here, we did exponents, and then we did division, then we did multiplication, and then we did addition. And as long as that order follows the same order over here, where, notice we didn't do division before exponents, then you're in good shape. So go ahead and tag your levels as you go through it. That might be a good thing to do. All right, here's another great example over here. So again, what do I got first? I got parentheses, exponents, and so forth. So I see a set of parentheses right there. So I'm going to do that first. So I'm going to do 24 divided by, and then 4 minus 1 is 3. Now, since it's a single number, I don't need the parentheses anymore. Parentheses mean like there's multiple things going on. So we've done exponents. So, parentheses go here. Okay, now I have down to division. So division's next step. 24 divided by 3 is simply 8. So a lot of times students want to go 24 divided by 4 and get 6, but that's the wrong thing to do. So what we have to do is do the parentheses first, get that value, and then do division. Okay, so that's what we want to do in that example here. Let's take a look at 2 more here. All right, so again, I see parentheses first, so I'm working inside this. Now, inside the parentheses, what am I going to do first? So everything else stays the same. So I'm going to do the 5 squared first. So it's 6 plus 25. Okay. So here, if I want to tag it, I did parentheses, and in the parentheses, I'm doing exponents first. So that might be a good thing to tag. Okay. Next, I'm still in the parentheses, but now I'm going to add those two things together. Okay, so if you're in parentheses, you still go through order of operations. So when I'm looking at this, the only thing I'm focusing on is inside the parentheses. Now that I have that simplified, I can go 48 minus what's 6 plus 25, 31. Okay, and I can not write the parentheses here because there's only one number. The parentheses aren't needed. So now we do 48 minus 31, which is simply, what's 17. Okay. So here we have this subtraction, and then as your final answer. So notice how I'm tagging the steps off to the side so you can see what's going on. Now here we have two levels of parentheses. So the first level I see is this one right here, this bracket. Now notice inside that bracket we have another set of parentheses. So I'm going to look at that. So I'm going to rewrite this 3. I'm going to do it at the end. And then I have this bracket, and I do 32 divided by, now I'm going to do the green part first because it's inside parentheses. So 2 plus 6 is 8. And notice I don't need the parentheses there because it's one number. Close it out. Now here's another set of parentheses. Okay, so I did parentheses first. Now I'm going to do another parentheses. So I'm going to do 3 and then 32 divided by 8. So I'm just solely looking at the yellow part. 32 divided by 8 is simply 4. Okay, and this means, now don't be confused here, this is not a parentheses problem. This is anytime you have a number outside of the bracket. There's no work left inside the parentheses. So what's really happening here? Multiplication. Okay, and simply 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, so notice we did parentheses, and then multiplication. Okay, so those are 4 really good examples to show order of operations. Feel free to refer to these notes when going through your practice problems. Now the second part of this video has to do with evaluating an expression. So again, an expression is a series of terms, numbers, and variables put together, no equal sign. And we're saying, okay, what is a variable? A variable is a unknown number. Okay, now that's the setup, but let's say we go ahead and find out what the number is. So, you know, a layman's term is, let's plug 4 in. Okay, so we call that evaluating. So we want to evaluate. Now the key to evaluating is use parentheses. I can't stress it enough. Use parentheses, and it takes care of about 90% of the problems that we see with these. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite the expression, and every time I see an x, I'm going to put a parentheses. Okay, so literally I'm going to plug something in here, and I'll plug something in here. And what I like to do is plug in the value. So we know x is equal to 4, so I'm going to plug a 4 in here and a 4 in here. Now I'm going to go ahead and do order of operations. Okay, so let's do the top. Simple. 9 times 4 is 36. Done. Okay, on the bottom, I'm going to do inside the parentheses first. So 4 plus 2 is 6. So we have 3 times 6. Okay, and feel free to write out each step. Now I'm going to simplify it again. So we have 36 divided by 18. And say, okay, what is 36 by 18? We need to reduce fractions when I can. Both of those are divisible by 18. 18 times 2 is 36. 18 divided by 18 is 1. I'm sorry, 36 divided by 18 is 2. So on the top, we're going to get 2. Take an 18 out, and 18 divided by 18 is 1. And then you could leave it as 2 over 1, or we can simply say the answer is 2. Okay, but notice how we plug it in. We figured out what x is this time, and we evaluate. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Now, sometimes we'll give in multiple variables. So again, I'm going to write the problem out. I like to first put parentheses, like I call this like a skeleton equation. And even here, I do a second set of parentheses. And I'm going to plug in my values. Okay, so x is 3, so x goes here, and x goes here. And then let's simplify. The top is 30. The bottom is 5 on the inside, times 2 is 10. So I just kind of did 2 steps in one there. You know, as you get better order operations, you know, feel free to do that. Just make sure you're doing it in the right order. 30 divided by 10 is simply 3. Take a 10 out of both of those. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next example. So again, we have, now this is why parentheses is important. So we want to put parentheses squared minus 3. These, anytime we call this an input. So what am I inputting in for y? Well, we're plugging in -2. So we're going to put a -2. Now the reason why is the negative is inside the parentheses. So what's -2 squared? That's -2 times -2. And we all know a negative times a negative is a positive 4 minus 3, which is 1. A lot of times students want to put a negative on the outside and they forget to square the negative. That's why parentheses are important. So I'm going to highlight that. That's a very big point in this lesson. All right, let's take a look at this last example here. So here we're going to write my skeleton equation, parentheses minus 1. Another great example of why we want to use parentheses. I'm going to plug in -2 in for y. So notice the double negative. So 12, all right, 2 negatives make a positive, plus 2 minus 1. So we're going to have 14 minus 1. This is, order of operations, addition, subtraction at the same level. So I just go left to right. So I did the left part first, then the right part, and we get 13. Okay. So there are some great examples on how to evaluate, either with one variable or with multiple variables. The key again is use parentheses. Okay, so that's the key to all this. I really want to see that done to make sure we know what is going on.